He asked me for some money, and I froze. Some part of my brain was like, you don't know what he's going to do with the money. You're a student. It's not even your money. It's not safe to open your wallet late at night. And some other part of me was just, it's a little bit of help. You can help him. You would want someone to help you if you were in that kind of situation, right? I stood frozen in that spot for more time than I'd like to admit. There was a war going on between my head and my heart. But after a while, I gave him some money and I walked away. And this decision weighed on my mind for quite a few days, not because of the money, but because I was curious. What were these two sides in my head that were at war? As a psychology student, I wanted a scientific insight into the conflict that had taken place. But as a philosophy buff, I knew there were deeper implications for those two sides that had come and the decision that had come through. What made me make the decision that I made? And it made a question rise in my brain. What leads us to make the decisions we make every day? Now, philosophy as a field has been asking these questions for centuries, from ancient theories of ethics to modern theories of justice. Philosophy asks, what guides us to our decisions? And perhaps more importantly, what should guide us? But throughout history, philosophy has only been able to theorize as to why we do what we do. It hasn't been able to look under the surface. That's where neuroscience came in and offered a new insight. Neuroscience has the scientific tools to help us look inside the brain. What happens in our brain when we're making moral decisions, when we feel empathy, when we're facing a moral dilemma? Because of this new insight, neuroscience is now restructuring old philosophical debates. Now, morality is one of the most important discussions in philosophy, but philosophy is mostly abstract theoretical concepts. And neuroscience allows us to look at this in a way where we can actually see what's going on. What makes a decision good? When do we do what's considered good? Do we do it when it's easy? Do we do it when someone's watching? Do we still do it when it's hard? What guides it? Is it reason? Is it emotion? Is it both? That's the question, and those questions are what I'd like to explore with you today. With philosophy as the theoretical lens and neuroscience as the scientific map, I want to take you on a quest to wonder, where does our sense of right and wrong even come from? Now, you might wonder, what is moral judgment even? Moral judgment refers to the decisions we make when we're faced with an ethically charged decision. In that moment when we think, what should I do? Now, philosophy has thought about this for centuries, and two major schools of thought have emerged. To understand those, I'd like to ask you a few questions. Have you ever made a decision that didn't sit right with you emotionally? But you made it anyway because it was the rational thing to do. It made sense. It was practical. Maybe you let go of a relationship you really cared about, even though it hurt, because you knew it was the healthy thing to do. Maybe you told the truth in a situation where lying might have been more beneficial, because again, you're just following the rules you've been taught. Maybe you wanted to know that you wanted to discipline somebody, a teacher, a friend, someone younger than you, even though it kind of hurt you to do it because you believed they needed to learn a lesson. If you've ever put your emotions aside to prioritize what is rational or what is practical, then you've probably aligned with the thoughts of moral rationalists. Now, moral rationalism is a field of thought that believes that morality comes not from feeling something is right or wrong, but that thinking it is right or wrong. That we rationalize, we make practical decisions, and it is not emotions like empathy, guilt, or even disgust that kind of directs what we do. let's look at the other side. Have you ever ignored what other people might have told you was practical, what was rational, because you were just aligning with what you were feeling? In that moment, maybe you disciplined someone, or maybe you stood up for someone, even though it might have been more risky for you to say something, because you felt uneasy if you let an injustice occur. Maybe you lent money to a friend or to a stranger, even if you couldn't afford it, because you knew it was the right thing to do. You felt it was the right thing to do. In these moments, your actions align with those of moral sentimentalists, the opposing field of philosophical thought. Now, moral sentimentalism believes that your moral compass is rooted in feeling. When you make a decision, it's not because you think your way through it, it's because you feel it. When you put aside rational thinking, when you put aside deliberative thinking, when you don't sit and consider everything, but instead listen to what your emotions are telling you, then you're aligning with moral sentimentalists. So which is it? Is it reason or emotion that guides moral judgment? This is where neuroscience enters the picture, and it changes everything. To understand, I'd like you to consider a unique and interesting case study. The case study of psychopathy. Now, we all know what psychopaths are, right? We've seen them in mass media. Hannibal Lecter, Patrick Bateman, the Joker, Lord Voldemort, these are all characteristically cold, manipulative characters who have no emotion, have completely emotionally detached, and show complete absence of guilt. But psychopaths are more than just villains from movies. They're clinically individuals who have specific traits, such as emotional detachment, a lack of empathy, superficial charm, a tendency to manipulate. But contrary to popular opinion, psychopaths know the difference between right and wrong. They just don't have the same emotional system in place that regulates a person like you or me. Now, these TV villains know that mass murder, looting, pillaging, hurting people is wrong, but the things that stop you or me from doing this is just not in place. Neuroscientists found that psychopaths have reduced connectivity between two regions in their brain that are responsible for emotions. The ventromedial prefrontal cortex, which is associated with empathy and guilt, and the amygdala, which is associated with fear and anxiety. Now, you may be wondering, what does this mean to you? But if the absence of these emotions has such a profound effect on how psychopaths can make decisions, what impact does the presence have on your life? Have you ever met someone new? They seemed like absolutely perfect. Everything about them seemed fine. They matched your interests. They aligned with your friend group. Your parents liked them. Your friends liked them. But something about them made you feel really uneasy. Just something in the pit of your stomach. Maybe you listened to that gut feeling, or maybe you didn't. And a few weeks, months, maybe even years down the line, you got to know what that gut instinct was screaming at you. That gut instinct, it's not magic. It's your brain drawing on subconscious emotional data. Neurologist Antonio Damasio called this the somatic marker hypothesis, that your brain was making emotional decisions on the basis of what had already been done beforehand. Individuals whose emotional centers are damaged, like people with damage to the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, those signals are missing for them. So while they know what to do, they might not be able to make those decisions in real time. They might know that it's wrong to lie, but when placed in a situation, they might choose to lie because they still don't know how to act immediately. That feeling that you feel that makes you act in a certain way is just lacking with them. Now, you might be thinking, really? Emotion? That's what morality comes down to? That's what the neuroscience of moral judgment by Joshua May and collaborators tells us. But isn't it unbelievable especially in today's world. I mean, how many times have you been told by a teacher, by a leader, by a friend, take a step back. Don't let your emotions cloud your judgment. Make this decision rationally. How many times in management are leaders told that you shouldn't let your emotions interfere with a smart, practical decision? But that's the beauty of what happens when we let disciplines like philosophy and neuroscience collide, intersect, because they tell us more about how we perhaps should be making decisions and what we should be treating and teaching our next generation. But what happens when reason and emotion collide? Now, for that, I'd like to present you with one of the most well-known ethical dilemmas in the field of philosophy, the trolley problem. Now imagine, a trolley is rushing towards you, and it's about to run over 5 workers on one path. You're standing next to a lever. If you pull the lever, it redirects. It goes to another path where it would kill only 1 worker instead. Would you pull the lever? Now this, on first glance, seems like a purely philosophical dilemma. But the 2 common answers of, yeah, of course I'd pull the lever, or no, I wouldn't get involved, reflect 2 clear ethical theories of action. Individuals who treat personal harm as immoral, even if violating the rules you've been taught could produce better consequences, are aligning with something called deontological action. For them, killing 5 people, if out of inaction, is still not as bad as deliberately having to kill 1 person by being directly involved. They're just following the moral rules of don't kill. But individuals who might make the choice to pull the lever and redirect it are characteristically utilitarian in their thoughts. They're prioritizing the maximization of overall welfare. Interestingly, when it became more personal, when the problem became more personal, for example, instead of pulling a lever, if you had to kick someone off a bridge to save 5 people, people became less and less likely to give that utilitarian response. They were now more likely to step back and say, I don't think I would get involved. But why is that? Why are there different decisions, different points of view when something is impersonal and when something is personal? Now, fMRI scans and studies using fMRI scans have shown us that when we make these different decisions, it literally uses different parts of the brain. When the problem is impersonal, when you're just pulling the lever, parts of the brain that are involved with controlled, deliberative reasoning light up. But when it was more personal, people's brains started to reflect that it was using more of the emotional centers, like the amygdala. Suddenly people started hesitating. They started to recoil. But individuals who gave utilitarian responses often showed in fMRI scans that their amygdala was less activated. It literally means that they were using less emotion to make those utilitarian decisions. And the more active the amygdala was, the more likely they were to give deontological responses. Individuals who have damage to the VMPFC would similarly perhaps make utilitarian choices. But interestingly, when the brain was flooded with serotonin by Mary J. Crockett and her collaborators, people became more likely to make deontological choices. When you flood your system with a neurotransmitter that makes you more likely, that activates your amygdala and your emotional centers, you suddenly become less likely to make that choice of making that decision to involve yourself to save 5 people and kill 1 person. But what does any of this mean to you? It means that morality isn't something that we just think through. It's something that we feel. We feel it in that pull of compassion. We feel it in that deep pit in your stomach uneasiness. We feel it in that rush of indignation or anger when somebody else is being mistreated. We feel it in that passion that makes us stand up for what we believe in. Now, throughout this, we've wondered, is it reason or emotion? But this collaboration has shown us that it's not reason or emotion, it's reason with emotion. It's not logic instead of feeling, it's logic informed by feeling. When we separate the two, something essential is lost. We see it in the case of psychopaths who, with reduced connectivity in their emotional centers, struggle to make what we consider morally right decisions, even though they can understand what may be correct. Patients with damage to the VMPFC lack the somatic markers, lack those gut instincts that we don't realize govern almost every decision in our day. Even in the trolley problem, we literally see that when something is personal or impersonal, how much emotion and its role in our decision-making can change. Now, what does this mean for you? I wanted to discuss that in this world where we place so much emphasis on rationality, where rationality is often considered the greatest form of intelligence, maybe we need to explore the role that emotion can have as well. It's not that it's emotion or reason, it's a mixture of both. And philosophy has been asking these questions for centuries without any concrete evidence for it to come and make an impact on our life. But now, with the involvement of neuroscience and the scientific evidence it has provided us, we can understand more about ourselves. With philosophy asking the questions and neuroscience giving us the map, we know what morality truly is. At the core of this conversation, it's not about emotion or science or philosophy. It's about acknowledging that these approaches don't compete. They complete each other. And only if we acknowledge that can we truly understand what it means to make a moral judgment. What is morality about? Thinking, feeling, absolutely, and choosing every day what kind of person you want to be in the world. Now, neuroscience and philosophy answer these same questions in different ways, and yet when they come together, their hidden harmony tells us not only why we do what we do, but who we are. Thank you.